Welcome to the Digging Deep ATVMX Podcast with your host, hailing from Kokona, Wisconsin, riding a CST tires, SSI decals, Valvoline-backed Yamaha YFC 450R, four-time ATV Motocross National Champion, number 25. Cody Jansen.
What's up, everybody?
We're back.
Welcome to the latest edition of the Digging Deep ATVMX Podcast, episode 143 of the Digging Deep ATVMX Podcast, presented by our title sponsor, CST Tires, in stock and available for purchase today at shop.csttires.com. I'm your host, Cody Jansen, saying hello to our more than 262,000 monthly Digging Deep listeners in all 109 countries in which you are listening, and this is our Briarcliff Legends Race Review Show. ATV racing fans had been eagerly anticipating the final weekend of July for as long as we can remember. When it finally arrived, it was even more legendary than we could have ever imagined. Join us as we relive the unforgettable 2024 Briarcliff Legends Race Weekend on this episode of the Digging Deep ATVMX Podcast. But before we drop the gate, let's quickly shout out all of our incredible partners. CST Tires, go to shop.csttires.com today. Yamaha, thanks to Blue Crew. Thanks to SSI Decals, Valvoline, DID Racing Chain, Namura Technologies, Bronco ATV and UTV Components, Launderville Steel Enterprises and Concrete Supply, the financial advice of the Haymauer Financial Group, DP Brakes, Factory 43, Binky's Forever ATC Museum, Impact Solutions, Ultimate Poly Products, UPP Racing, our choice when it comes to case savers, chain sliders, intake manifolds, and more. Use discount code DIGGINGDEEP15 at uppracing.com, the D6 Ultimate Quad Series, and Manscaped. Get 20% off and free shipping with code DIGGINGDEEP20 at manscaped.com. Speaking of legendary, whether it's the Lawnmower 5.0 Ultra, the GOAT of electric razor trimmers, my personal favorite, the Beard Hedger Pro Kit from Manscaped, or the best nose hair trimmer ever created, the Weed Whacker 2.0, get 20% off and free shipping with code DIGGINGDEEP20 at manscaped.com. So rad that Manscaped continues to invest in ATV racing as a longtime partner of Digging Deep. Help us keep them in the fold and involved in ATV racing by using our Digging Deep 20 code so they know you enjoy digging deep and what we're all about. Support all these great companies that support us, and for any products that fall through the cracks, click that Rocky Mountain ATVMC banner on our website to help us out. It's that time of year. The season is an absolute grind, and you're surely experiencing a little wear and tear. No matter what off-road gear parts you need, Rocky Mountain ATVMC has you covered. But before you buy, simply click that Rocky Mountain ATVMC banner on our website. By using our specific link, we get a percentage of what you buy on the back end, enabling you to help us out while purchasing the parts you need anyway. And did you know you can buy OEM parts from Rocky Mountain ATVMC as well? Yep, shipped conveniently right to your door. So click that Rocky Mountain ATVMC banner at diggingdeepatvmx.com to help us out while satisfying your gear and parts needs. We want to remind you of the Quad Cross of Nations European Trip VIP Experience drawing presented by the Digging Deep ATVMX Podcast. This is your opportunity to win a trip to the Quad Cross of Nations this fall. Head over to our official Facebook page or our website today for official rules and to get signed up ASAP. We are going to announce a winner by Wednesday, August 28th, and that's going to creep up on us quicker than we know. So get on that today. It's a great way to support the Team USA effort. And obviously, we all want to go to Europe to cheer our boys on. Lastly, we want to shout out all of our donors, including new donors this month, Dean Passbrigg and Tom Calloway. And there is a third donor that I want to highlight. You stopped by our Digging Deep tent at Briarcliff and talked to my parents. I believe you ordered a t-shirt that we are to send to you, and you donated a little to our show. However, I regret to inform you that that paperwork got lost somehow in transit. So if you are able to reach out to me or reach out to us via our social media channels. You can email me at codyjansen25@hotmail.com. Have a family member or a friend reach out, however, to get your info and your order info, and we will get you taken care of, and I'll even get you something extra for the trouble. So I want to thank this trio of donors, Dean Passbrigg, Tom Calloway, and this third donor, and we're going to do something extra special for that third donor for the hassle here. So thanks to all who have donated. Now, if you are interested in donating and hearing your name on the show, you can find the Patreon or Buy Me a Coffee donation links on our website. Thanks to all who have donated, of course. Now, if you can't donate, but you still want to help us out, you can leave us a rating or a review on iTunes and Spotify. That helps us out a bunch too. Now, it's showtime. The 30-second board is up, it's sideways, and the gate is down. Time to dig deep.
Let's go!
All right, guys, I thought it would only be right to start our review show with the same guy that we started our preview show with. Of course, I'm talking about Briarcliff track owner and promoter Jeremy Osborne. Jeremy, this ATV Legends weekend finally came and went. It finally came to be a vision that you had for so long, you worked towards for so long. It finally happened. It finally became a reality. I kind of asked you at the end of the weekend before we left Briarcliff there how it felt. And I think at the time you were maybe a little numb to it yet. So I'll ask you, nearly 7 days later at this point, you've had some time to chew on this thing and see the way that the internet and the masses of ATV motocross riders and fans and legends have reacted to this thing. So I'll ask you again, how do you feel in the wake of truly what was a once in a lifetime event?
Honestly, I don't feel a whole lot different than I did 7 days ago. Maybe a little less tired. I thought the event went pretty well. I think we did about as good a job as we could have. Riders and fans and people is overwhelmingly positive. They're probably a little more, I guess, enthusiastic about it than I am. I think it went really well, but the people who were here thought it was just outstanding. At least that's what I'm getting feedback by the people.
Absolutely, Jeremy. I think the general consensus is that you absolutely smashed this thing. The fact that you had a vision, the part that stands out to me is that you had a vision and you had this goal and this carrot out in front of you. And I kept saying, and I probably said to you at some point, I know I said on these shows that the goal was a really, really, really lofty one. You know, when you say Legends race and you try to put all these big name dudes together, I know when you first ventured out, I mean, you had a goal of having just, you know, anybody and everybody that, you know, a who's who of ATV racing legends. But at one point, I certainly know that you didn't know that you were going to get them all. And honestly, you pulled it off, man. You pulled it off. You had the class fitting for a Legends race. And then you had a crowd fit for a Legends race as well. And to hear you at the end of the weekend tell me that you were within maybe 15, 20 spots of being basically like out of parking for it. And you see some of the videos that Gloop has out there, like the aerial shots of cars as far as you can see, of standing room only in the middle of the track there. I mean, it was on the grandest stage what we had hoped it would be, what we hoped would happen. And it truly came to be. And for that, man, you deserve so much credit. Because like I said, you set out with a really lofty goal and you showed people that it was possible, man. And it lived up to all the hype for me, and it surpassed it, honestly.
I say often I'd rather be lucky than good, but I prefer to be both. And I think we hit that a little bit on the weekend. We got lucky with the parking. we couldn't have fit too many more people. But yeah, we were shooting for a complete event, and I think we nailed that. There's so many little sidebar things that happen that weren't even planned. I'm kind of drawing a blank right now, but it's just like little things that I'm like, oh, I didn't know that happened. It's something that I don't know if you tried, you could recreate it every single time. It just happened and things came together and we had a lot of help from a lot of people. It was meant to be. I'm just glad it went well. You know, that's all I can say.
Yeah, man, it was a weekend I'll never forget. It was a weekend I'll never forget. I think that's a reality for so many people, including those riders that were part of the Legends event, including the riders that, the pro class, right? They benefited from racing in front of, standing room only crowd, which was big for them. I think you could see it in the emotions from the riders. I think you could see it from the racing that we saw on the racetrack, that those guys were up for it. They were up, they were elevated for it. And obviously so many fans and enthusiasts were, up for it too. And so excited for this thing. So I know you outlined online, but tell me, I know the number of riders was huge. They talked about it in the tower. And then obviously the number of spectators was huge. So outline those numbers for me.
I've been to quite a few races, ATV races, I mean, and I just don't ever remember a crowd like that at too many of those events, even back in the early 2000s. I don't remember anybody. I just don't remember even a Loretta's kind of having that large of a crowd, to be honest. But
no,
I don't know. I didn't pay attention to stuff like that back then either. So
tell me the numbers one more time. I lost you there for a second.
674 race entries. So that generated roughly 1,500 total people Friday, Thursday, Friday. And then spectators were 3,669.
Wow. That is absolutely amazing, man. Tell me the total one more time.
5,170.
That's just insane, pal. So numbers were huge. Obviously, event was awesome. Weather was perfect. Track was amazing. Do you have a favorite moment that happened? I know your experience is obviously different than the rest of us because you're in the tractor, you're, taking care of all the logistical things probably and management and all that stuff. You have different stuff going on than anybody else on the weekend, but do you have a favorite moment?
Probably watching Travis and Doug the last few corners of the Legends race. Watching them two kind of go around the last few and end it together was pretty cool.
Oh, that was all time for me. That was all time for me as well. That would definitely be involved in my favorite moment as well. I mean, hard to top that one. Hard to top Jeremiah being the Grand Marshal and leading that class around for the sight lap. But yeah, like you said, so many cool things. I mean, like Tim Farr wasn't supposed to be there, and he's there for the riding on Friday and early Saturday. I know he tried to be a part of it as much as he possibly could, despite the wedding that he had going on, and that shows how important it was for these guys and stuff like that. So like you had kind of outlined already, so many little things that you didn't even know happened that made it, such a special event. There were so many people there. It was the who's who of ATV racing. Jeremy, I know we're battling some internet stuff here and whatever, but just wanted to take the opportunity on behalf of the ATV motocross and the ATV racing community to thank you for all your efforts. I know you had told me after the end of the weekend there that it became a third full-time job for you over the course of the last, 3, 4, 5, 6+ months. And I think that all of your efforts, all of your hard work, all those things, it really ended up showing in the end. I think in the end, it ended up just being an absolute smashing hit. And for that, we can't thank you enough. I don't know. I mean, I said up and down on these shows and in person that there was a lot of those guys in that Legends race that I don't think we thought we were ever going to see at a race again, let alone on the racetrack. And so many of those guys had so much fun. Like so many of them reached out to me and said, man, what a weekend. So all the hard work that you put in, I think it paid off in the end. And then obviously wanted to thank you for, the opportunity you gave me again this year too. I mean, to have the opportunity to be a part of that weekend in the small way that I did, man, I truly can't thank you enough. Because for me as well, for so many of those riders, whether amateur, pro, or legend, and all the fans, and then for me as well in my role, it'll be a weekend that I never forget. So truly just can't thank you enough, Jeremy.
You're welcome. I really appreciate you doing it. And you kind of selfishly gave up your I don't know, to be like one of the people. You're stuck doing a job like me. And you probably, even though you got to see a hell of a lot more than I did, but you probably still felt like you'd almost rather be like a rider on that particular weekend, So I appreciate that. I appreciate you not, giving up on what you had already committed to. Means a lot.
Yeah. Would have loved to have been a rider. Would have loved to have spent a little more time with some of the awesome people there. But at the same time, man, I had an absolute blast doing the job that you had given me the opportunity to do. So Again, Jeremy, just want to thank you. I know we're battling some tech stuff here, but just wanted to hop on a call here. Thank you for everything and just get your emotions and your take on the weekend here. So with that, just want to thank you again, Jeremy, and we'll talk soon. Okay. We'll see you in Tennessee in a few days.
We'll get right back to the show, but now a word from our sponsors. And thank you for listening to these ads. Without these great companies, none of this would be possible. Show your support for the people who support us. The official tire choice of Digging Deep, CST tires are the choice of ATV racing's elite on the track, in the woods, and every other terrain. CST tires swept the ATV racing world in 2022 as Joel Hetrick, Bryson Neal, and Bo Barron rode their Pulse MXR and Pulse HT tires to an ATV Pro Motocross title, GNCC XC1 Pro title, and 10th ATV Pro Works Racing title, respectively. Led by champion Joel Hetrick and podium contenders Bryce Ford, Jeffrey Rastrelli, and Nick Janusa, CST's Pulse MXR tire is the most trusted tire in ATV motocross today. Available in soft and standard compounds, the Pulse MXR offers the highest level of traction, most predictable cornering, and superior wear characteristics when compared to the competition. And did I mention they have a contingency program as well? Visit shop.csttires.com to join the CST takeover today, or prepare to be beat by someone who did. The best of the best choose CST. Do you? You know we're Team Blue Crew here at the Digging Deep ATVMX Podcast, as the Yamaha YFZ450R is the official ATV of Digging Deep. In a move started by 8-time ATVMX Pro Class National Champion Chad Wienen, who with his next championship will become the winningest champion in ATV motocross history, we are living in ATV racing's YFZ450R era. Alongside Wienen, 7-time GNCC XC1 Pro ATV National Champion Walker Fowler welcomed a pair of new champions to the Yamaha Champions Club, as the podium-proven Yamaha YFZ450R proved to be the winning choice for Joel Hetrick and Bryson Neal. This unprecedented success for the YFZ450R, its unrivaled quality and performance, and the clear fact that Yamaha is the leading OEM supporter of ATV racing has resulted in a complete Yamaha takeover within the sport quad market. Evident by the continuation of Yamaha's Blue Crew Racer Support Program, Yamaha riders will once again cash in on payout and prize opportunities in 2023, including a chance to win a brand new YFZ450R. For more info, head over to YamahaBlueCrew.com. Follow Yamaha Outdoors, as well as the new Blue Crew official channel on social media, and check out Yamaha's full proven off-road lineup at YamahaOutdoors.com today. SSI Decals, your way. SSI Decals sets the standard with the best looking decals, graphics kits, and vinyl wraps in the industry. Established in 1947, SSI took shape as an offshoot of their parent company by doing a little work for local pro Chad Wienen. Nearly 2 decades later, and fueled by a passion for ATVs, the company has flourished into one of ATV Moto's most recognized brands. From ATV motocross, SSI has expanded into graphics and design work for top racers in GNCC, Works Racing, Pro Motocross and Supercross, Off-Road, and more, headlined by 8-time world champion Top Fuel drag racer Clay Milliken. Whether your project is big or small, SSI Decals will make your identity stick. Get started today at SSIDecals.com and use code DIGGINGDEEP10 for 10% off at checkout. Things are about to get sick. The Digging Deep ATVMX Podcast is brought to you in part by DID and their wide range of championship-winning chains. From the street to the track and everywhere in between, DID chains are designed to give you the optimal riding experience with great performance and increased chain life. Consistent to the core, pick up your box of reliability today. DID, what drives you?
We are proud to be partnered with Namura Technologies. For over 20 years, Namura has pushed the limit of value and reliability in the ATV and side-by-side market. Covering more applications than anyone in the industry, Namura's full line of cast and forged pistons, connecting rods, gasket kits, and industry-leading top-end repair kits and more have led to higher overall engine performance for your machine. Visit your local dealer or online at www.namura.com and follow along on Instagram for giveaways and exciting new products in 2023. Namura Technologies, your one-stop shop engine component supplier.
We are pleased to be partnered with Bronco ATV and UTV Components. Bronco has been an industry leader in replacement hard parts and accessories for all makes and models for over 15 years. With a catalog that includes a full line of electrical components, engine internals and cylinders, shock and suspension parts, winches, clutch kits, valves, carb kits, bearing kits, and drive chain parts, Bronco is your hard part source for whatever you need for whatever you ride. Available exclusively through distributors around the world, visit your local dealer or online at broncoatv.com.
For over 150 years, Valvoline has been dedicated to constant improvement and innovation across all disciplines of racing. As a proud member of Team Valvoline for nearly a decade, I have witnessed their unwavering commitment to pushing the boundaries of performance. Valvoline has sponsored some of the greatest names in motorsports, solidifying their position as a powerhouse within the industry. Being a part of this historically great team has been an incredible privilege. When it comes to my equipment, whether it's my daily commuting vehicles, race quads, or anything in between, I trust nothing but Valvoline. Their range of products and lubricants consistently deliver increased horsepower, durability, and engine life. I'm excited to announce Valvoline's breakthrough in performance, Valvoline Ultimate Power Sports. With up to 8 times stronger rust protection and 50% better wear protection, this cutting-edge formula ensures your ATV's engine runs smoother and longer for the ultimate ride. Tackle rugged terrains with confidence, knowing your ATV's engine is equipped with the best protection available. Ready to experience the next level of performance? Head over to shop.valvolineglobal.com and use code DIGGINGDEEP10 at checkout to unlock an exclusive 10% off on your purchase. Don't miss out on this limited time offer to enhance your ATV's performance with Valvoline's Ultimate Power Sports engine oil. All right, guys, the Briarcliff Legends Race weekend didn't just live up to the hype. For my money, it far surpassed it in so many ways. I've been chomping at the bit to jump into this race review podcast and talk about this once-in-a-lifetime event. And joining me to do so tonight is a father-son duo who I knew would be absolutely perfect for this episode. I thought about these guys right away. I thought about them already when we were at the racetrack last weekend. Say hello to Curtis and Justin Avalo. Boys, welcome to the Digging Deep ATVMX Podcast.
Hey, how's it going? It's good to be here.
So Curtis, you're making a return. You're a former fantasy champion, right? We talked to you a couple years ago here on the show. Justin, it's his first time around here on the show. Curtis, you hinted at the fact you might have been a little nervous for this thing, but nothing easier or more fun to do than to talk about ATV racing. And when you're talking about a weekend like we had last weekend, man, it doesn't really get any better than that. So I'm stoked that you guys would be here and willing to join me to help cover the races, talk about the races a little bit. And you two were mentioned on the preview show actually a couple times because Jeremy referenced you guys coming from Montana and Joe referenced you guys kind of being part of his program. So this couldn't have worked out any better. Everybody knew that you were going to the racetrack.
Yeah. We actually were like, man, we need to meet Jeremy because he didn't know see anybody from Montana. And we both were like, man, we need to meet him and say hi. So we just never got around to getting there. We were too busy helping, mechanicing for Joe.
Obviously for so many of us, right? We waited for this weekend for so freaking long. When did you guys start formulating the plan to travel from Montana to all the way to Ohio for this thing?
Yeah, that was pretty early on at the first little inklings of any kind of buzz around it whatsoever. There was something said, I think it was on your podcast. And when I heard that, I just texted Dad and I was like, so we're going to go, right? We just said, well, let's wait for the dates, get an exact time, and let's just start getting things organized. And I called Joe and I said, hey, you're going to race in this, right? And he's like, oh, heck no. So he said, I might go to it and watch. I'm like, oh, no, you need to race in this. So it took a little convincing. Like you said in the last one, it was a lot of convincing him. And it was mostly poking and prodding people like me, continuing to bug him.
I think that was kind of a theme. Honestly, I think that was a theme with a lot of these guys. There was a handful of them that were really raring to go. And, obviously any chance you give John Natale to go ride a quad, he's still going to. But for the majority of these guys, I think that it took a lot of grabbing and pulling to get them pushed into doing this thing. And I think, as more and more people signed on to it, we had kind of went over this fact that as more and more signed on to do it, the momentum, kind of got rolling and you got more and more guys. But I think Joe was one of those guys that, I think early on I was getting word he was not going to do it. And then certainly he was very involved then when this event finally came to be. That
was quite funny. And you think about it, a lot of these guys, and rightfully so, the ATVs were their life for so long that they just want to experience something different. So do they want to be, brought back into the light and stuff. And I think once, like you said, once the momentum got going, I think the sportsmanship and the warrior within really kind of rose up and you're not going to take that out of them. You're just not.
Absolutely not. No, you can't take it out of these guys because we're talking about the greats. I mean, for the majority of these guys, they're truly legendary figures in our sport, and you're not going to be able to take that gnarly competitor out of them. And we talked about the fact at the racetrack, I think that, in your mind, you don't age like you do, maybe physically or whatever. Like in your mind, you're always going to feel like you can go out there and burn some laps at the ATV Motocross Nationals. So as this event gets closer, right? As this event gets closer, you guys hop on the airplane, you're heading. I actually think you went to Joe's first, you said. So as all this comes to be, take me through the emotions then when like you're actually going on the trip, you get to Tennessee and, then you're making the trip up to Ohio, to Briarcliff. Take me through the emotions that it was finally here. Cause that's how it was for me. Like the schedule goes really, really fast, especially when you're covering races and you're doing, racing of my own and all that stuff. I mean, the season seems to just fly by faster than ever. And for so long, we've been waiting for this thing and now it finally comes. And for me, it was like, how did that sneak up on us? But at the same time, it's like, man, we've been looking forward to this for a year.
It was quite funny. I mean, just the whole trip, we're sitting there kind of like two giddy little kids, sitting there listening to the podcast review, going through all the stuff. Mm-hmm. We're like, oh, we gotta do our fantasy picks too. Oh man. So we're sitting there on the plane, just doing all of that together. It was just a riot. It was fun.
I bet. And I knew that, you guys and making a big trip out of this and all the planning that went into it and all those things. I just knew that you were probably going to have the ultimate experience, which is why I wanted to be able to talk to you guys about this. Cause I knew that this was probably like a core memory made on that weekend heading to Briarcliff. So then you get to the racetrack. I know you're obviously close with Joe. Curtis, I know a number of these guys. Justin, you referenced to me at the racetrack. You looked up to all of these legends, and watching the Wave Host movies and all these things. So when you get to the racetrack and you see a number of these legendary quads, and I'm sure you start to see some of these legends around the racetrack, like what is the emotions like then? Because now that's got to be the moment where it becomes truly real.
It was surreal. Like when we rolled into Briarcliff and we were pit right next to Marshall Smith and then Dale Rath, and Rath had Shane Hitt's 250R sitting there, the famous 250R. And I was looking at it, I was just like, man, I can't believe I'm here right now. Like it didn't even set in at that point. Yeah, it was almost like Justin and I were saying, it's almost like time actually slowed down for that moment when we got there and we're looking around and we're just like, and it was crazy. The atmosphere, and I know you probably felt it too, Cody, but the atmosphere was like everybody had a smile on their face. Everybody. Yeah. It was wild. I mean, it was, the pressures were different than at a normal national, and it just had a different feel to it altogether.
It didn't feel like a normal national, at least to me. Maybe it would have if I was riding, but for me, it didn't feel like a normal national. It felt like something I've never really experienced before. And everything went so fast for me. I wasn't there early enough on Friday to see the free practice for these guys. So then I assume that was a whole nother set of emotions when you finally see that these guys take to the racetrack and like you're actually seeing these dudes cruising, guys that like I saw some of the videos of like Shane Hitt, right? And, you think of 1997 Grand National Champion and he's out there like looking like he's still burning laps every day, like it's just insane. So what was it like to then see those guys take to the track the first time? And we had some surprises too, right? Like Tim Farr made it very clear he was not going to be there. And then he ends up being there and literally doing as many laps as he possibly could, showing how important this event was to even him, who really wasn't slated to be a part of it. So tell me about Friday, seeing those guys take to the track for the first time, because again, that had to be a whole nother set of emotions, I would assume. Yeah.
So I think Joe referenced it on the preview podcast where he was talking to somebody and they said, well, you going to hit Bigfoot? And Joe was like, well, what's Bigfoot? What is that? Like, it's a big jump. You got to hit it fourth gear wide open. He says, well, I'm not going to hit it then. And sure enough, first lap of that Friday practice, he just cracks it off. And It just made me laugh so hard.
That's what makes those guys
Oh,
as
yeah.
good as they are, is they don't even have to give it a test run.
It was so funny because Joe rolls in. I'm like, that was a nice not hitting the jump. And he laughed. He's like, yeah, pretty good, huh? He said, I couldn't let Shane get the jump on me. A lot of them guys, you know, I mean, I've interacted with quite a few of them, you know, off and on, but it was pretty emotional, pretty cool seeing a lot of the guys that held big time, you know, race numbers, big time, you know, wins, and just shaking your hand and just being excited to be there. And you know, Doug Eichner, he he shook my hand. He's like, "Where's your gear? How come you're not in the gear? How come? What are you doing?" And I'm like, "How do you feel after this?" And he's like, "I'm tired." I'm like, "That's probably why." So.
Oh, that's good stuff. Yeah. I think that you use the word giddy, and I think that that's such a great word to use, because basically that's the vibes that I got from those 20 legends or whatever the number was. That's the vibes I got from them too, was they were giddy for this thing. And the one thing too that makes it feel so much different than another event is, at any other event, I guess, other than maybe the finale, there's always another week. You know, it's always working towards a bigger goal. It's always those things when it felt like, I mean, I don't know if this is the right comparison to make, but it felt like the Super Bowl, and the fact that there is no tomorrow, that like this was it. And I think you felt that from those guys too, where it's like, there's certainly some of those guys we will never see on a motocross track again, not at an ATV motocross national anyway. And we had it this weekend, and it was kind of a theme I left at the end of the preview show, was I'm just trying to literally take in every minute, every moment of this thing and cherish it. Yeah. And I found myself over the weekend a few different times trying to ground myself, like appreciate what I'm looking at right now, like appreciate the guys I'm watching on the racetrack. Because for me, especially announcing from the announcer tower, that's maybe why everything happened so fast, because it was just one race after one race after one race. And, you know, I'm trying to, you know, bring the excitement from the Legends race to the 70 CP class, you know, like, like that's the name of the game. And it was just surreal to see some of those guys and some of those numbers and some of those names back on the motocross track again, the ATV motocross track, and in such a credit to Jeremy and all those things. So we'll get into obviously all of that as we go here. But speaking of fast, your guy, Joe Bird, is fast qualifier on Saturday morning. And I don't think I expected that. I mean, I know Joe was cruising. He was going fast. He definitely made light of how serious he was taking this, kind of coming in. But Joe Bird goes out. He's basically near the top of the board the whole time, and he ends up being fast qualifier. So take me through watching that go down, and then what the emotions were like back at the Bird pit after that happened.
That was pretty wild. It was kind of funny because pulling into Briarcliff the day before, Toby Keith's song came on, Good As I Once Was, came on, and he's like, "Oh, this is a perfect song for this weekend." And I'm like, heck yeah, it is.
So what you don't know is that he referenced that song in the interview that I did with him last week. But the audio cut out for a second, and I had to scrap that little section of the interview. But he literally referenced that song when him and I were sitting here last week before the race. That's insane. That's
hilarious.
Yeah, that is so funny.
Funny because I'm like, yeah, exactly. You're good as you want, and so that kind of plays into his setting the fastest lap too. You know, kind of falls into that. It's like,
I saw him say that in the last day or two. He's like, "Call me the one lap wonder" or something. Oh
he's having a good time with it, and it's good. It's good seeing all of that come together.
Yeah, absolutely. So as the motos get closer, I think everyone at some point, like I felt all this buzz or this topic kind of take a precedence. All of a sudden, people started to notice the crowd and the amount of vehicles. And Jeremy goes on to say, post race at the end of the weekend that he was within probably 20 spots of being out of parking anywhere on the property. And he was parking people in his yard. He was parking people literally on any blade of grass that he had. And that's how many spectators we ended up having. That's how many vehicles ended up being in attendance here. I can't remember. It was the number like 6,000 basically people in the gate for this thing. And what an insane number. What an insane, like I had the perfect vantage point to look up towards where they were parking everybody. It was cars as far as we could see from the tower, and then to look down at the crowd in front of us. And I had been telling people coming in it was going to be standing room only, but it truly was like as big a crowd as I could have ever imagined for an ATV motocross race, man. It was absolutely insane. The people came out in droves for this thing. And just, I mean, it goes without saying, credit to Jeremy for pulling all this together. But at what point did you guys see or notice like the people actually, really, really, really showed up for this thing? It was what we expected and then some, I think.
It was so Justin and I were kind of being the tourist nerds. So I mean, we took pictures at the Briarcliff sign, and we took pictures of all the cars, But when we really started noticing is when we were going out for second practice, kind of notice, and there's getting to be quite a few people. Well, then when Saturday came around, it was like, holy buckets, we can't even get the bike down the lane to go to get into the staging area, and people were just humming and buzzing and everything all around. It was just wild. It was cool. Some of the fans, just while the guys were actually getting in line to race, they're trying to get pictures with them and shake their hands and everything. And I was like, man, I like it. I love that part of it, but there's a time these guys need to have they need to start focusing, this is, so, but it was good watching the whole thing happen. But yeah, it was when you're looking around, it's not like the fans were just in one spot. It was like everywhere. The pits.
It was everywhere. It was everywhere because I had the same thought. I'm like, okay, there's a bunch of people in the middle of this racetrack. And if you look to the outskirts of the racetrack too, it was people on people on people. Like it was around the fences on the outside. It was people everywhere you looked, everywhere you saw. Yeah. It was standing room only for this thing. And it is really, really cool. Like there's a lot of those guys that have been completely away from the sport for some time. And yet it shows that they'll always have a home here because they come back to the ATV Motocross Nationals and everybody comes from everywhere to see them. And the thing that I kept telling people, and I think I said it a number of times over the weekend on the PA, was it wasn't just a who's who on the racetrack. It wasn't just a legends race on the racetrack, but all the people that were there from, like I said to my wife at one point, I'm like, we're in the tower and I just look down and I see Walker Fowler just walking around, and Adam McGill was there. And then I look to the other side and there's Tom Carlson and Mikey Walsh, and they stood there. They must have stood there for 2 hours and just chopped it up. And it's like, there was people like that everywhere. There was Jimmy Elza, and everywhere. there was people like it was the who's who of ATV racing. Like everybody from everywhere came out. And that was a whole nother aspect that made it so freaking cool.
I don't know about you, Cody, but I don't know if you saw, but there were people that were almost like, not really rekindling friendships, but just catching up with friendships all through the whole thing. I mean, people would stand there and just shake hands and talk and, oh, how's this? How's your dad? How's mom? And so on and so forth. You hear all the conversations and you have people just all over the place. People are getting that.
Yeah. You look at, like I said, you look at some of these guys on the racetrack and there was, Barry McCarty hadn't ridden a quad in 30 years. Dustin Wimmer hadn't been at an ATV National in 10 years. And there's an array of these guys that were, somewhere in the middle of those two. But it was like the racetrack was a home, so quickly. It was like things just went back to the way that they always were for them. And I thought that that was something that was worth highlighting. So, let's kind of get into the racing. So the motos, eventually come to be the crowd is gigantic. The anticipation builds and builds and builds. They come out for for the sight lap for this thing. Jeremiah Jones is the Grand Marshal. He leads them out there on this, on this sight lap, and which was absolutely amazing. We'll get into that. And Moto 2 happens. The gate drops. It finally comes to be, like I said, and really Moto 1 was all John Natale. We'll get into him as we go here, of course, but behind him, it was Josh Upperman, who used one of his patented hole shots to be up front all moto, put it on the moto podium. Take me kind of what either of you took away from that first moto. We can start with Curtis and then ask Justin the same question, but what did you guys take away from that first moto? Because I went in, and as it got closer and closer, I just had a very hard time thinking that John Natale wasn't going to be the guy to beat. I think we came in, at least in my mind, that it was Natale and it was Wimmer were the two favorites. John Natale delivered on that in that first moto. And then after that, I didn't really know what to expect. There was a few guys that I knew were going to be strong. And then now I look at it and I'm like, well, of course, Josh Upperman was going to be right up there off the start. That's what he did for a decade. But what did you guys take away from that first moto?
We interrupt this program for a special news bulletin.
The following message is brought to you by Manscaped.com. The Manscaped engineering team has outdone themselves this time, creating the Lawnmower 4.0 trimmer, now available for purchase in the US and Canada. Join over 2 million men worldwide who trust Manscaped, an official sponsor of the Digging Deep ATVMX podcast, with this exclusive offer of 20% off and free worldwide shipping with code DiggingDeep20 at Manscaped.com. I'm one of the first people to try the new 4.0, and I am blown away. This thing is next level. What sets this trimmer apart from all the rest? The Lawnmower 4.0 gives you the ability to turn the LED spotlight on and off when needed for a more precise shave. It features a new multi-functioning on-off switch with travel lock for those of us who like to travel. And my favorite, the new trimmer allows you to customize your trim with 4 different guard lengths, an upgrade from its predecessor that only featured 2. If you're listening, you know that good tools are a must, so wait no more to get the best tools for the job. Get 20% off and free shipping with code DiggingDeep20 at Manscaped.com. That's 20% off with free shipping at Manscaped.com by using code DiggingDeep20.
Hey everyone, this is Larry Mills, president of DP Brakes North America and proud partner of the Digging Deep ATVMX Podcast. We at DP Brakes are a longtime supporter of ATV racing and the world leader in sintered brake technology, dominating the ATV world for decades by supporting the best four-wheel racers on the planet. This year's lineup includes Jeff Rastrelli, Mark Baldwin and Baldwin Motorsports, Ford Brothers Racing, Nick Janusa, and many more, including Mr. Digging Deep himself, Cody Jansen, plus all the top 17 GNCC pros such as 7-time champion Walker Fowler, Bryce O'Neill, Hunter Hart, Cole Richardson, Jared McClure, Adam McGill, and previous champion Chris Borich. These top riders continue to appreciate the high performance and impressive durability that their DP brakes have to offer, products that ultimately help place them on top of the podium week after week. DP brakes are available through www.dp-brakes.com, or you can purchase them through your local Parts Unlimited stocking dealer, or you can even message us, myself, Larry Mills, or DP Brakes on Instagram or Facebook. And if you have any questions about product or sponsorship support, please ask us. We are waiting for you. Join the best ATV riders in the world equipped with DP brakes, and have a great year, everyone.
Nearing 2 decades into the brand's existence, Factory 43 is back and better than ever, continuing to make major waves in the ATV world. For the 3rd consecutive season, Factory 43 is the official aluminum parts choice of the Phoenix Racing ATV team, providing their state-of-the-art Evo Nerf bars, MX-style front bumpers, and grab bars for 2-time champ Joel Hetrick. If you're in the market to upgrade your Nerf bars, bumpers, or grab bars, head over to factory43atv.com to see their full line of industry-leading products available for all makes and models. Head over to factory43atv.com today.
Hey everyone, it's Michelle Stillo, director of the D6 Ultimate Quad Series. We've been working hard over the years to bring you the very best in local ATV motocross racing. The D6 Ultimate Quad Series has race classes for all ages and skill levels. Maybe you're an experienced rider or you're just starting out. We have a class for you. We're excited to announce that we have 11 rounds of racing at tracks located in Pennsylvania, New York, and Maryland. For more information, follow us on Facebook and Instagram.
As soon as the 30-second board went up, it was like straight goosebumps and just a moment of like, what are we just watching? It was nuts. And when that gate dropped, I mean, you got to see all of your heroes
fellow competitors, just the guys that you read about and watched for so many years battle it out to do it one last time. It was just unreal. To know that, we put a bike together to get Joe, safely to that first start, that was pretty cool. Seeing all of that and just hearing, it was just a different kind of, it was just a different kind of sound. I mean, it really was.
What about you, Justin?
So I like to consider myself the biggest Jeremiah Jones fan on the planet. So when I heard that he was doing the Grand Marshal on that sight lap, I got a little bit emotional when he took off, that's for sure. And looked around the mechanics area, making sure I wasn't just being a little girl. But I don't think there was really a dry eye around me there. So that hit me pretty hard. But no, like Dad was saying, once the gate dropped, I mean, growing up watching Wavos and National Born Killers and stuff like that, and rewinding every race scene like hundreds of times, like that completely lived up to every bit of my expectation. Even still at 50 years old, these guys are still just as gnarly as they were when they stopped.
You couldn't have said it any better. And I think you and I talked about it at the racetrack, but yeah, like I did the same thing, watched those segments over and over and over again. And to see Jeremiah back on the racetrack was incredible. To see all those guys ready to do battle was amazing. And the race itself was just icing on the cake for me, like all the other little things, having them there, all of that stuff was just as important, or that was as big to me as anything. And let alone then to see them go racing. So like I said, Natali really did his thing in that first moto. He kind of sprinted away a little bit. Opperman ran in second throughout. And then we saw this first Chris Bithell sighting, and they talked about, not to sleep on him coming into the weekend. He was very impressive in that first moto. He'd go on to be very impressive in the second moto. And then fourth is where we saw Dustin Wimmer come out in that first moto there. In moto 2, again, John Natali, he gets out front. This time we saw Josh Opperman, who stood out in that first moto. He goes flipping in the first corner. So that was not obviously ideal. I think that was really one of the big and only get offs, at least in the motos that we saw from our legends. I know we saw Downing go down pretty hard in qualifying, but that was a bummer for Opperman. But this time, Dustin Wimmer got a much better hole shot. He got the hole shot that he wanted, and it was John Natali, Dustin Wimmer 1 and 2. Really wouldn't ever see that battle come to fruition between those two guys, but it was still pretty darn fun to see Natali and Wimmer kind of flying in formation again in that second moto. And then Chris Bithell again, man, in third, he goes 3-3. Chris Bithell, the GNCC guy, he was just as impressive as anybody. And I saw people who I really, think highly of their opinion, saying that Chris Bithell stole the show for them. Guys like, I think Mike Walsh was one of them that said, Chris Bithell stood out to him more than anybody. So what about the second moto? Who stood out? What did you see? Anything stand out in that second moto? Justin, we'll start with you this time.
Oh man, I think like you were touching on with Dustin Wimmer and John Natali there, and we were kind of expecting a battle there that didn't come out to play, but I just locked eyes on those two pretty much the whole race, because I was completely dumbfounded that I was watching Dustin Wimmer on a track again, after everything that went down there when he retired. I thought for sure that was it, that there was never going to be another Wimmer sighting again. So seeing him back out on the track was pretty awesome, and to be battling up front with Natali yet again, that was pretty awesome.
Reminded you of the heydays, and I felt the exact same way. Like, I got out of my truck. My wife and I got out of our truck. We started heading towards the pit area or whatever on Friday. And Mrs. Wimmer was like one of the first people I saw, and she was just freaking stoked. And I saw Dustin a few times over the weekend, and he was just as happy as he was when I saw him, and we had him on the show here, leading up to the race. Everybody was so excited, and to see that was really cool. And like you said, and I don't want to make light of the fact, like, we saw saw them. It's not like it was a snoozer. Like they were still pretty darn close. Like one mistake from Natalie and Dustin would have been there.
Yeah.
It just, we never saw some dicing up battle or anything like that. But at the same time, to see them run 1-2, like you said, I couldn't believe I was seeing it, honestly. So yeah, Curtis, what about you? What did you see in the second moto there?
So was that the Greg G and Josh Upperman that got tangled up on that first corner? Is that what that was?
I think so. I guess I didn't quite catch who got caught up with Upperman, but I know Upperman was the one that, went flipping essentially in that first corner, and it resulted in a 2:19 day for him. So not the way obviously he wanted that to go for him, but that first moto was good.
The funniest part was, well, back up to first moto, Nick DeNoble, I think he forgot where he was, and he overjumped the big anthill there and looked around like, what just happened? So I razzed him a little before the second moto, and I said, did you forget where you were? And he said, oh, heck yeah, I did. So he got around that whole Upperman and whoever, I think it might have been Greg G. But when he got around him, he looked around like, did I just get through that? It was like he was surprised that he got through it, and he just hammered down. It was hilarious. So,
oh my gosh.
Yeah, it was good. I was really kind of surprised because you had said, don't sleep on any of these guys. And so we're going in, we're thinking, all right, we're kind of looking and thinking about some of these names. And Chris Bithell was not the one that I had on my head that was going to, up in that same lap, same lap time.
Yeah.
And it's not that I slept on it. I just was like, there was the other names that caught my eye ahead of him. And then all of a sudden he comes on. It's like, holy cats, where's he at?
He was just flying, right, Curtis? And yes, he wasn't on my radar. I was told not to sleep on him. I was told he was going to be good. And I was told that he looked really fast, but I was also told he hadn't ridden a quad in 10 years. So, he's riding a dirt bike a lot, but I mean, I don't put a ton of stock into that, So yeah, man, he was gnarly and he was as consistent as anybody on the day. And at the end of that second moto, he was right there with Wimmer,
Yeah. After the finish line jump, when you made that hard left-hand turn going down the start line, down the start row there was actually a kind of a shelf, almost like a rut and a shelf right there on the top. And a lot of them guys were catching it and being able to kind of rail through it. And it was so impressive to see all of them, how they handled it. Now, I mean, I've watched some of the other classes and everything, and there was a lot of guys that were doing a good job with that corner and coming into it. But something about them seasoned pros that when they come off of that, it didn't throw them, it didn't upset them, and they just rocked it out. It was wild to watch. It's hard to explain if you weren't there to see it, But I know Ripping Up Films will have probably some footage of it. But man, it was pretty wild seeing that.
No, I agree 100%. And that was one of my biggest takeaways from watching the Legends race is just like knowing so many of these guys had very little to no riding time and all that stuff. And yet that muscle memory was still there. It was still inside them. They still knew how to do it. And it's just insane. But like I said at the start of this conversation, that's what made those guys, the best of the best. So kind of looking at this results sheet, John Natale, he steals the show. Doesn't surprise me. He was a gamer. You think about him showing up for the Great Outdoors games and winning that. I mean, he was kind of just like so good at the one-off stuff and these specialty events. I think that this just gets added to the list. And on one of the videos, and I would give it, I don't know if it was Wes Miller stuff or Gloop stuff or Trammell and stuff. I don't know whose it was, but I think it was maybe Bryce's guys. I think it was maybe Bryce's video guys. And he had made the comment that he doesn't feel like he ever retired. He just feels like he stopped racing for a while. He hasn't raced in a while. And that's basically how it looks. He didn't look like a retired guy at all. He looked like he looked like how I always remember him looking, like physically on the quad, like literally everything looked exactly like it did 10 years ago when I was racing against him.
Yeah. Except 10 years ago, he wouldn't have given you as many smiles and accolades like he had in the past. The guy was like the people's guy this weekend. I mean, he was loving on everybody, talking with everybody, just enjoying it. I don't think you could have wiped that smile off with anything. I mean, he was just, grinning ear to ear. I mean, we walked by and talked to him, and he was just super, super welcoming and just enjoyed visiting with the fans. I mean, he was like, "You're the reason we're here." In fact, Justin, you had a conversation with him.
Yeah, so on Friday there, when I was going around and talking to everybody, I found John and met him, and told John, I said, "I've been idolizing you guys since I was just a little guy, on my LEM 50, and I told him how much of an honor it was to meet him. He said, no, don't get that twisted. He said, it's an honor to be meeting you guys. You guys, the fans, are what makes the show. You guys, the fans, are the reason why that we're here racing. I'm just the guy that's holding on to the handlebars."
That's awesome. That sounds like John to me, though. He was in his glory all weekend, man. And yeah, like I said, he stole the show 100% on the track, in the pits, the whole deal. And he handled it so perfectly. So pretty fitting. And like I said, doesn't come as a surprise, but I remember talking to him when we had him on the show and, kind of highlighting the fact that he always showed up for those one-off big specialty events. And this just another one of those.
Oh, yeah. The Wavell's invite, he dang near took the whole thing.
Exactly.
So,
which is another reason why he was very much my favorite coming into this race. Like, knowing he just did that a year or two ago on a quad he had never ridden, coming in with no training. I mean, yes, that's why he came in as the favorite and he showed up. We mentioned the fact that Dustin Wimmer was probably the co-favorite or close second, or however you want to say it. He ends up second overall. Dustin Wimmer goes 4-2 for second overall. Incredible to see. The riding style was back. He was smiling and happier than ever to be at the racetrack.
Yeah.
And to think that, it's so crazy to think, because he wins his titles when he's like 19 or 20 years old, that the guy could still be in his prime, like he's younger than Chad Wienen. Like he's, he could very much still be the guy or a guy in the pro class.
Yeah.
Just crazy to think about how things could be different with him, but was pretty awesome to see him back at the races and having as much fun as he did. That's what stood out to me more than anything. Even with this Legends race, I just didn't think that he would be one of the guys that was so stoked to be a part of it. And then to have that come to be was really cool, as somebody who really, really, really looked up to him. Like Dustin was one of the guys, when I was a younger kid, he was like one of my favorite guys with the riding style that he had. Just so cool to see that of him. And then, like we talked about, Chris Bithell finishing out the podium with those guys, kind of two that you expected, or one came completely off the radar. Like we were saying before, not that I was sleeping on him, but he was a GNCC guy. Like I would have never guessed it.
It was wild though. I don't know if you caught that, like guys like like Shane Hitt and, downtown Patrick Brown were just, it was like watching them ride. They didn't miss a beat.
I know.
They really didn't.
I know.
It was wild watching this whole race. It was crazy,
Yeah. And I kept finding myself or telling myself not to fixate on the two at the front, because there was great racing going on throughout. And just like you said, these guys just over and over and over, lap after lap, hitting their marks. It was so impressive. The guy that we talked about that was going to be good coming into the race, into the weekend, a guy that I put on my fantasy team and paid off in a big way, was Richard Pelchat. He was in the mix in both motos. He goes 5-4 for fourth overall. And he was one of those guys that was very consistent at the front of this thing. I knew he was going to be good. Because, like I said on the preview show, I raced him just a few years ago. I knew, he's not like he's super removed from the sport, and he's always been a gnarly rider. And he showed up too, being in the top 5 in both motos, fourth overall. And then another guy that we just recently had on the show, Billy Cottage, he said that he kind of wanted to prove himself, or that he wanted to show that he belonged a little bit, at least in this, this Legends race this weekend. And he gets a top 5 overall spot, going 6th or 5th overall. Right. So I was super happy for Billy too.
That was wild. And to see the name, I walked by and I'm like, Cottage. I had to take a double take and I'm like, Billy Cottage? What? And I just, for whatever reason, just had this moment. I was like, wait a minute. Holy cow, we got such a wide span of riders in this, from eras that are, up to a pretty recent era, all the way spanning way back, and it was just wild to see it.
Yeah, it was so freaking cool. You look at some of these names: 6th overall, Corey Ellis; 7th overall, Joe Bird; 8th overall, Shane Hitt; 9th overall, Greg G; 10th overall, Josh Upperman. We outlined the fact that he went 2:19 for 10th overall. Nick DeNoble, 11th. He had a really good run in the second moto. In the first moto, I think he crashed. I know he crashed with Joe. I think he crashed a couple times on his way to that 17th spot. And then in that second moto, he had a really good run and finishing inside the top 5.
He was flying. Yeah. And it was funny to talk to him on Friday evening, because he was talking about how he rode the Cannondale on Friday a little bit. And he told me about how weird that was and how wide it felt to him. And he couldn't barely hit the rear brake and all these things. And I told him, I'm like, you guys would have heard this, that I'm like, man, just ride the Honda. I want you to be in the mix. I know you'll be a top 5 contender, all these things. So I was really happy to see that, because I knew how, he got sick last week and he was in the hospital and all these things. But I knew how much he wanted to be a part of this event. I was bummed that he had that little get off in the first moto, because I'm like, such a big event. His parents are there for the first time in forever and all this stuff. And I just wanted it to go well for him. And I was really glad that second moto was a good, solid race for him, because I just love that guy. Yeah. He's so full of energy. I think, where do you get that?
Oh man. I love it. So 12th overall, Downtown Patrick Brown; 13th, Cale Downing; 14th, Doug Eichner; 15th, David Hagsema; 16th, Barry McCarty; 17th, Travis Spader; 18th, Justin Brees; 19th, Doug Gust; and our finishing out guy to finish off this thing was Johnny Hale. We'll get into some moments with some of these guys maybe as we kind of finish up here, because we'll have some. I'll ask you guys your favorite moment of the weekend, and we'll kind of wrap things up that way. Quickly, before we get to that point, I had said coming in that the only thing that could overshadow a day where we're going to probably crown a champion, where we're probably going to, keep this perfect season alive and be very, very close to the end of that and seeing that come to fruition. The only thing that could overshadow that is this Legends race. And that's very much what happened. But not to be forgotten is the pro racing on the day. That was absolutely insane. The pro racing was. Yeah. We eventually see Joel Hetrick have another Joel Hetrick type of day. He earns his 9th overall on the season, his 18th moto win. He's led 213 laps of 231 laps. It's insane. Another thing that happened on the day, like I said, we see him go on to win this title. We see him keep the perfect season alive. We also saw him tie Chad Wienen for the number of wins in their careers, now deadlocked at 66, which is something too that it should be a giant talking point. And yet we have so much to talk about. It's insane. But yeah, Joel Hetrick, as far as pro racing goes, he was the man on this day. I think he kind of joked about the fact that he didn't get either of his patented hole shots on the day there at Briarcliff, but made it happen in both motos. And yeah, I guess I'll give you guys an opportunity, because I've asked all of my co-hosts here on the show. You've listened to these shows and that I've asked them all to talk about Joel Hetrick. So I'll give you two the opportunity to do that now.
Just unreal. But Joel wrapping up his 5th championship, 3rd consecutive, trying to be the first in AT motocross history to be undefeated. But no, that was pretty dang awesome to watch that. I got to go down and watch John Natale hand Joel the number 1 plate, and that was pretty dang cool. That was almost like the official passing of the torch,
Mm-hmm. What about you, Curtis? You see Joel Hetrick he had a day so similar to his days this year, where if he doesn't get the whole shot, man, he just chips away. You can literally watch him decide when he's going to make that move a couple laps in, and then he makes the move. He sprints out to a little gap, and then he maintains. So, Curtis, what was your takeaway from seeing literally the fastest man on the planet at his best doing his thing? What'd you see there?
Well, what was wild I don't know if we're going to talk about first or second moto, but in the second moto, there was a moment there, Bryce got out in front of him, and it was wild watching Joel just literally almost put his head down and almost say, okay, it's time to get to work, and just to see him dig and find that extra half a second or find that extra power going through a turn or going into, it was totally different watching him in person than you do get to see him on TV or, on the video clip. But he had his head just focused right square where he needed to be. And when he made that pass and got out in front, he didn't get out in front and start showboating. He was just keep my head down. Let's make this stick. Mm-hmm. And he really made it stick. He really did.
Yeah, I think you're so right. I mean, in person, you see the guy, and I get such a joy out of watching him do what he does at the racetrack, because you're so right. When you can literally see when he decides, okay, it's time. And then you see him and he's just relentless. As far as stalking another rider goes, nobody does it like him. Nobody does it as good as he does. I mean, he is all over the back of that four-wheeler in front of him. It's insane. And Bryce is a gamer too. We saw Bryce get the whole shot, and there's that video that Rip It Up Films posted of those guys bouncing tires off each other. And Bryce is a gamer too. But yeah, it's insane how good the guy is. He's so in control, and he can always go faster.
Yeah. So it was wild because Justin and I were at that when the pro race happened. Justin was over there watching the gate start, and I was on the other side watching everybody come around once they got through the first part of the track. And right over that, over the jump, over Bigfoot, you saw them battling before that, but in bouncing off each other. But coming over Bigfoot, all of a sudden Bryce is way out in front, and all of a sudden he looks back and he's pointing back, and we're like, what was that? Yeah, what was that all about? And he just kind of kept looking back continually. And I said to Justin, I said, man, you look forward, man. Just keep going, race the track in front of you. Don't worry about him. Well, then when Rip It Up lets out that short clip, you're like, oh, that's why he was pointing back. that makes sense.
Right.
And it's like, oh. So it just kind of brought a little bit of life to it, because it was like, man, it had a different perspective for a moment, and then you see the whole thing. And that moment right there, though, there were too wide going into that turn, going into the turn, go to Bigfoot. And that was crazy, because that didn't have that much room there.
No, you're exactly right. That was one quad wide there, and they fit, they were trying to fit two in there, which is crazy. It's funny that you say that, because in the tower, Natalie came up to the tower, and we were standing side by side, and I hear him say, "Bryce, what are you looking back for? Race forward," but that's just Bryce. He's always looking around. He's always, kind of doing his thing. It's just a patented Bryce Ford move at this point. But it was fun to, John Natalie just gets off the podium from doing his celebrating of the second Legends Race moto, and then he's standing next to me, kind of talking his way through Bryce's moto there as he's leading early. So yeah, we'll kind of mash all this together for the pro class just so that we don't get too long here. But it was a very topsy-turvy day, because I don't know that anybody had on their bingo card a podium of Hetrick, Wolf, and Lindquist, but here we are.
I did have Wolf in my fantasy pick, so I scored good.
Yeah, there you go. I had Lindquist. I was just 1 point back, but yeah, to think that those two guys were the podium guys and no Bryce Ford, for the first time all season. No Brandon Hogue. Things changed so quickly there in that second moto. And I guess that's probably where we'll focus, because the first moto was pretty, I would probably say standard. The first moto was pretty standard. The second moto, though, is where we saw all the craziness. So Wesley Wolf ends up second overall. Max Lindquist gets a terrible start in the first moto, a good start in the second moto. He goes 6-2 for third. So both of those guys end up on the podium, but that didn't happen. That didn't come together until there was just like 3 or 4 laps to go in that second moto. So we'll kind of talk our way through this as we go down this list. So Nick Janusa ends up 4th overall. It was an awesome return for him to racing. He goes 5-5 for 4th overall. I was extremely impressed, especially in that first moto. He ran up front inside the, top 3, 4, 5 for the duration of the moto, obviously. So he was really impressive. Bryce Ford comes in at 5th overall, second in the first moto. He's leading in that second moto. He, is riding really well. And then all of a sudden he lays up. He's basically cruising around. You can watch him cruising around. He heads into the pits or to the mechanics area and all these things. And you can tell John Natale is actually the one that points out to me his bike's sputtering and, it's missing and it's popping and all these things. So he ends up doing all the laps. He ends up 11th in the moto, which is actually a savior for points, and ends up 5th overall still on the day and stuff. But I think it was an injector. I think that I learned it was an injector. And I think when one of those goes bad, you are able to kind of manage by cruising around the track without really trying to give it any gas, right? Like you can kind of just keep it at a very minimal, moderate throttle position, and you can kind of cruise around and make your lap. So I think that that's what happens. So that happens, and it seems like all of a sudden Brandon Hogue is going to be the major benefactor from this. And so now we'll keep going down the list here. 6th overall is Jeffrey Rastrelli. He had a really good second moto. He goes 8-4 for 6th. Mason Jackson, rookie of the year. You can stamp that at this point. 7-6 on the day for 7th overall. 8th overall is where we find Brandon Hogue. And like I said, he gets a 3rd in the first moto. He's then running up front. He's running 2nd in the second moto. And then he breaks an axle. So like within a lap or 2 of losing Bryce, to basically cruising around, then we completely lose Brandon Hogue to this broken axle. He's going to essentially DNF. He ends up 14th. And everything in like a 3-lap span goes from, okay, Team USA, the normal, Hetrick, Ford, Hogue, that's our podium. It very quickly switches to Hetrick, Wolf, Lindquist. Like our whole world just kind of got flipped on its lid there in a few laps time.
Yeah, that was pretty wild. Justin and I were on. So once the start happened, Justin came over to where I was over by Bigfoot, and we're watching the whole race kind of go down. And it was just great seeing. And we're like, man, Hogue is flying. He's putting it together. And then, like you said, Bryce goes down, and then it was a couple laps later. We're looking around, we're looking at each other. We're like, hey, where'd Brandon go? I didn't see him go by. Did you see him go by? It literally was like one of those, because we were watching, but we were kind of wanting to catch some of the race, in the middle of the pack there. Mm-hmm. And there was some actually good racing going on there between, Star and Glada and boy. But I don't know, man. It was wild, because my heart broke for him, because man, did he have a race put together. And when we heard that he broke down, or he, at first it was Justin and I both were like, did he crash? Is he okay? Or something. And then after the race was done, we heard that he broke an axle, and we're like, well, okay, that makes sense. But dang, that's too bad, because he's putting something together.
Yeah. I think you're right. From the tower, I could see that tire go flying, and obviously, very quickly knew what happened. So heartbreaker for both Bryce Ford and Brandon Hogue, but the benefactor of that is Wesley Wolf and Max Lindquist. Max Lindquist adds another podium to his season, so that's awesome. He's been great all season long. And Wesley Wolf returns to the podium for the first time in over 3 years, almost 3 years and 2 months here. And, in the middle of there, it wasn't just a drought, but it was gnarly injury and multiple surgeries and coming back from that. And I think, I posted today, it's so fitting that Wesley Wolf gets on the podium and earns his best finish of his career with the second overall, because he's been absolutely riding like a man possessed. And it's just been really, really fun to see. So congrats to those guys. We'll finish up our pro class kind of rundown here. Joe Chambers ends up 9th overall. Another solid showing for the rookie. Kevin Sard didn't have the day he wanted. He ends up 10th overall. 11th overall, Adam Ulrich, who rode really well, especially in that second moto. He finished 8th in the second moto. So shout out to Adam Ulrich. John Glada, 12th overall. Cody Ford, 13th overall. And Marshall Smith rounded out the field in the 14th overall spot.
Success in the ATVMX world is similar to what creates financial success as well. The right people, the right advice, and more importantly, hard work and the benefit of an ongoing relationship as situations change and adversity is experienced. Do you have the right financial advisor to help you reach your goals? Haymower Financial Group can create a personalized, goal-based plan to help your family prepare for whatever life brings. Call me, Scott Haymower, at Haymower Financial Group, a private wealth advisory practice of Ameriprise Financial Services, at 920-338-8150. That's 920-338-8150. Offices located in beautiful De Pere, Wisconsin, with registrations and clients nationwide.
Headlined by the 4130 Chromoly, Launderville Steel and Concrete Supply is a full-service steel supplier of new and surplus steel, aluminum, and stainless steel products. This racing family-owned full metal service center and concrete product supplier comes with over 30 years of experience serving the entire United States from their central Midwest location. As the number one choice for nationwide shipments and with available next-day delivery in select areas, LSE has you covered near or far. 4130 is not just the chromoly tubing and plate used in the building of chassis for an array of motorsports applications, but it is also the name of the newest addition to the pro paddock with riders Jaden JJ Launderville and Max Lindquist, introducing the new 4130 Motorsports team. Launderville Steel offers a large selection of material for any project, including their concrete division that can supply everything you need to complete your next business or personal project. For a quote or more info, visit laundervillesteel.com today or give them a call at 715-675-6193. That's 715-675-6193. Here at Digging Deep, we have an obvious passion for ATVs and pridefully enjoy sharing the sport's history. Since 2019, when the podcast was born, we've been working to partner with individuals who share our passion, but one man and his vision had been missing from our partnership group. Until now. When it comes to the sport's history, the hallowed grounds of Binky's Forever ATC Museum has it all. Binky Tapscott's mind-blowing collection of 3- and 4-wheelers has preserved history by spanning all makes and models from Honda 3-wheelers in chronological order to unique builds that shaped ATV racing as we know it, like Doug Gust's iconic DRZ-powered hybrid thumper and everything in between. There's no denying Binky's passion, a passion that we certainly relate to here at Digging Deep. Binky's goal is to share his amazing collection with fellow enthusiasts by making his prized possessions accessible to the public via scheduled visits. Follow Forever ATC Museum on Facebook and watch foreveratc.com for further updates on possibly getting a chance to see Binky's Forever ATC Museum for yourself. We are proud to welcome Binky's Forever ATC Museum to the Digging Deep family. As the number one podcast in ATV racing, it's only right that we partner with the industry leaders in suspension tuning. Insert Impact Solutions. Impact Solutions is a full-service ATV and side-by-side suspension center specializing in the revalving and service of your motocross and off-road suspension. With over 25 years of elite-level knowledge, experience, and testing with riders of all ages and ability levels, Jay Goebel and the Impact crew strive to exceed clients' expectations for service and setup. Impact Solutions is the official Elka Suspension Service Center of the United States, offering unmatched product knowledge and experience. Whether you're in need of service, parts, warranty, sales, or technical support, Impact Solutions has you covered. Head over to impactsolutionsatv.com or give them a call today. With the desire to keep you in the race, Ultimate Poly Products offers the Ultimate Protection Collection of case savers, chain sliders, intake manifolds, and more. Founded on quality in 1998, this family-owned and operated business produces products created by racers for racers. These industry-leading products are proudly made and manufactured in the USA, with their case savers being made of the highest quality American-made polyurethane on the market and designed to completely conform to your engine case to help prevent case damage from a thrown chain, because no one wants to be a spectator on race day. Join top pro riders like Bryson Neal, Walker Fowler, John Glotta Jr., Adam McGill, Cole Richardson, and more by using UPP Racing products. Use discount code DiggingDeep15 at uppracing.com to save on your next order. Ultimate Poly products, made to last longer so you can ride more. Thanks for listening, and remember to support our partners. Now back to the show. Let me quickly just talk about, I don't think you guys were there on Sunday, so we won't get too much into the amateur stuff, but I do want to at least shout out Kinsey Osborne. She extended her WMX moto win streak to 43 consecutive motos, which is absolutely insane. She also finished 5th. She finished top 5 in her A class that she runs on Sunday in Moto 2. So she's an absolute monster. JJ Launderville, he stole the show as much as anybody on the weekend. He stole the show as much as John Natale. He wraps up the Pro Sport title. He goes on to win the Pro-Am overall as well. So the Pro Sport podium goes Launderville, Kazmarek, Norris. And then on Sunday, it was very reminiscent of Saturday's pro action because it was freaking crazy. Like there was stuff happening nonstop and we're losing guys. And yeah, it was nuts because JJ goes 1-2 for the overall. So JJ wins Pro Sport and Pro-Am. Kazmarek gets on the podium both days. He goes 4-3 for second overall in Pro-Am. And then Cottrell Altamirano goes 4-3 for third in Pro-Am. So obviously you're asking yourself, where was Mason Jackson and where was Kevin Saar, the two guys who are basically at the front of this Pro-Am field? And the answer is they were in 7th and 8th overall. Mason Jackson goes 15-1. He blows a shock in the first moto. And that was crazy too. He goes off the track. He's way in the back. Then he makes another mistake. He goes to the back again. He's racing up through the pack. And what happens is he blows this rear shock after getting up. He literally went from like 15th to 5th in like literally 2 or 3 laps. It was insane. And then he blows the shock and it's all for naught. I mean, the guy couldn't even hit a braking bump without the thing pogo sticking on him. And then Kevin Saar as well. He had a good run going in both motos. He finished second to JJ in the first moto. And then he was right up front in the top 3 in the second moto. And I think ended up maybe having a motor let loose on him or whatever. So heartbreaker for Kevin Saar. But yeah, Saturday's pro action was very similar to how we saw things play out on Sunday in the Pro-Am class. It was absolutely insane. So guys, let's end it like this. So we talked about the Legends race. I could talk about this all night. This isn't going to be our only coverage of the Legends race here, but let's end our conversation like this. It was an event for the ages. It was an event that I will never forget. I'm sure you guys never will either. It was truly a once in a lifetime thing. I think I've said up and down that we're not going to get this group of guys back at an ATV Motocross National ever again. Probably we're never going to see exactly what we saw this weekend ever again. And I see people already saying, oh, we got to do this more often. We should make it a series, all these things. And I think Jeremy was probably the first one to shoot that down. Like, yeah, I'm not doing that. Cause he told me at the end of the day on Sunday, I had asked him, how do you feel? And he's like, man, part of me feels great. Part of me is like, because I think so much work went into it. The guy was just spent. And he said it basically turned into a third full-time job because with all the stuff he was trying to navigate, with trying to rope all these guys into doing it, all of that stuff, man, just insane. So for me, Jeremy deserves so much credit for pulling this thing off. And he
not only created this Legends race, but like we talked about before on previous episodes and stuff, he was then kind of put the task on himself of, okay, well, if you're going to have this Legends race, it's got to be really, really legit. If you're going to call it a Legends race, you're going to have guys show up. It's going to have to be special. It's going to have to be something real. And man, he pulled it off to the nth degree. Like, it was such a big deal. It was so perfect. It felt like a dream. It really did. So credit to Jeremy there. And I guess to kind of end the conversation, give me your favorite moment or maybe moments, but what was your favorite moment of the weekend? What is the moment that you're going to kind of forever hold on to as, you know, that was the most special takeaway from that weekend? That's the moment I'm not going to forget. That's the moment when I think back on this Legends race at Briarcliff that, you know, is going to be a moment that I won't forget.
Man, for me, I touched on it earlier, but I'll forever have the image in my mind of seeing Jeremiah Jones with his boots zip tied to his quad, cracking it open and running a wheelie all the way down the start straight. That is an image that's going to stick with me for the rest of my life. But otherwise, the other big takeaway was really just the togetherness that I felt while we were there at Briarcliff. It was almost like we were family, you know, and that's a huge testament just to the whole ATV racing community, I think. Yeah, being out there at Briarcliff, that was just something completely different. And I couldn't be more grateful for how awesome everybody is and how inclusive they are.
Curtis, what about you, pal?
So, I mean, yeah, all the things that Justin said, yeah, there wasn't a dry eye there in the mechanics area. Jeremiah took off on that, and the crowd just loved it. But I want to say the podium, you're not going to see three major manufacturers on the podium until the manufacturers come back in again. That was pretty cool, and just a moment where, how fitting is that? It's a Legends race, and it wasn't dominated by one bike. Mm-hmm. It wasn't dominated by. It was dominated by a pretty wide range of age, you know, and it was pretty cool. That was probably one of the neater things to see, you know. And then just, I mean, come on, how perfect was the weather for the Legends race? I mean, how perfect was that? You know, just literally one of those moments where it's like, I don't think Jeremy could have planned it or anything. I mean, it just happened to be the best days for the Legends race. Not too hot, no rain threatening, nothing. It was just, it was like, this is awesome. How perfect is that?
It was absolutely perfect. You're exactly right. I thought the same thing. I thought to myself, you know, all this is coming together. We got all these guys. It's so great, so perfect. It's all falling into place. I thought the only thing that could ruin it is the weather. And by golly, it was perfect. You know, like you said, I kept looking around like, man, this is a dream. This is truly a dream. For me, and I think for a lot of people, I mean, it's hard to obviously top that moment for Jeremiah, with Jeremiah being the Grand Marshal and back on the four-wheeler on a machine that, you know, looks like a replica of his, you know, Yamaha in 2003. For me, it's got to be Digger. You know, you saw him fly over, and it's funny how all this comes together. Okay. Because for the 2 weeks before this event, right, I got Digger in my phone that I could play for you right now saying, I'm not coming. I was never coming. It's a mess. I'm not coming. Please help me tell people that I didn't bail. I was never coming. Okay. So I'm like, okay, I'm just going to play this cool and we'll figure out how we're going to deal with this. And Jeremy keeps telling me, man, I'm going to stay on him. Maybe we can get him to come. And I'm like, oh, gosh, okay. So I had basically punted on it completely, right? Like, I'm not going to bug Digger or whatever. That's not our relationship. Yeah. And Jeremy texts me on Saturday morning and I'm in the tower and he says, Doug will be here for the second moto. I'm like, no way. So you said, so yeah, I mean, I assume eventually I'm going to see the plane fly over, and sure enough, it's Digger, and you can tell he's doing his Digger thing and flying over, and he comes in, he jumps on the machine, his famous, Z400 powered thumper hybrid, the iconic machine from all those years ago. He didn't have a single lap of practice. He didn't even look at the racetrack. He went out there for the gate drop of the second moto. He's jumping the doubles, and he's Digger. And just as quickly as he was there, he had to leave because he had to do crop dusting in the morning that he needed to get home for. So like he was in and out, like, I don't know, like Batman or something. Like he was not even there to barely take photos and sign autographs. He came in, he raced the second moto blind, and then he was gone. And it was the most Digger thing ever, but in the same respect, it was awesome.
Yeah. See, so we were with Joe that whole week coming up to it, and Doug had a lot of issues just to even be able to go. He's like, well, I got one plane down now. And then the second plane went, it had a mechanical issue. And he's like, oh, I'm down to one plane now. And he's just texting Joe, and he's like, this is what I'm dealing with. And it was just kind of funny. So it was just, there was a lot of, you could say, race stress that came on there, and to see him just put it together and be like, all right, fine, I'm here, let's go. It was just pretty fun.
Oh my gosh. I'm so glad that he got to experience it. And that was the one bummer from the tower, is that, on the one weekend I was announcing, I never got to be free to go see everybody and hang out with everybody. So after the weekend, like right now, I still have 192 unopened text messages in my phone from every one of those riders saying, man, I didn't get to see you. You're a busy guy, like all these things. But so that was a bummer, but I was so glad that Digger was able to at least have a moment of like being able to be treated like the Digger that we all know and idolize. They talked about how that autograph line was 2.5 hours long, and he wasn't there for that. But I was so glad that, so many of those guys were able to be appreciated in the community, was able to show that appreciation for them coming out to this event, for the sacrifices made, the money spent, all those things to do this. And I gotta believe for those 20 guys, this is not ever going to be something that they forget. This is not going to be just another racing memory. This is going to be something really, really special, I would think.
Yeah. Joe mentioned, he's like, we were signing until 3 hours or so, and man, they just kept coming and coming. He said, did you see how far the line went? I'm like, yeah. He says, out the tent and all the way down to the starting line. And I was like, yeah, walked down there twice to see if we could, see anybody that we knew, And
yeah, that's just amazing. Joe texted me today and said he's still talking shit with John Natale. So maybe, I don't know how it ever come together. Maybe we can see something like this sometime again. But yeah, for the time being, man, I just got to thank Jeremy again for all his hard work, and thank all these riders for coming out and being a part of this thing and making it such a special memory for so many of us, and all that stuff, all the things. So guys, we've went on plenty for tonight here, but obviously I have to thank you guys so much for being here and chopping it up with me about the races. And yeah, maybe we'll be talking about another fantasy championship in the next couple weeks, Curtis. I don't know, but Justin's the one that we can't sleep on. Yeah, you're exactly right. Maybe we'll have 2 champions in the family.
2 years in a row, I won High Point, and then last year Pleasure Valley, I threw it away big time. And this year, I'm just hoping to keep it on rails and get past Loretta's and still at least be. I want to try and get back in the top 5. We'll see how it goes.
Oh, you're right there. You're right there. So am I. But I think I'm like 8 points out of the lead, I think, which is like a lot. And as far as the game goes, but you never know. One crazy thing happens, and I guess maybe we can make up those points. We'll see.
Yeah, one rain event.
Yeah.
That too. Well, it's Loretta's. You know it's going to rain. It's just when it rains.
Yeah.
Well, guys, again, I can't thank you enough for your time spent with me tonight. I can't thank you enough for your time at the races, kicking it with us a little bit last weekend. And I can't thank you enough for always supporting Digging Deep and all the things that we do. So yeah, guys, again, thank you for everything, and we'll talk soon. Okay.
Yeah. Sounds good, buddy.
Awesome, guys. That's Justin and Curtis Evelo signing off on the Digging Deep ATVMX podcast. Thanks so much, guys. We'll talk soon. All right, guys, the last thing I want to do here to conclude this episode, it's become an annual thing for us here at Digging Deep, is to give you a heads up on the races to watch at our finale at Loretta Lynn's, whose results may hold the crowning of a national champion in the balance. And we're going to start off with our open B class. Now, let me preface this by saying that all of these are somewhat subject to change. I know with throwouts and other things, it can change the math a little bit, right? But I'm going to highlight the ones that look like they're the closest, and we should be still battling for a championship in the championships that I'm about to highlight. So open B looks like it's a 2-rider fight, just 4 points separate Carson Beckman and Aiden Wells. In the 450B class, only 5 points separate Aiden Wells and Riley Valiant. It looks like another close one in the college 16 to 24 class, where Vincent Dillon leads Braden Orr by just 5 points. Looks like we have a battle to the end in the veteran 30 plus B class between David Porter and Ryan Mangold. Only 4 points separate those two riders. Just 6 points separate Joe Thomas and Charles Miller in the senior 40 plus B class. Wow, the women's 15 plus class shows just a 2-point gap between leader Ellie Rausch and Tegan Brancher, 138 to 136. So that one's as close as any class. Caden Pearson, who was on a tear last weekend at Briarcliff, looks to have a 7-point lead over Styles West in the schoolboy junior 12 to 15 class. It looks like Caden has a 5-point gap over Andrix Beeland in a 6-point gap over Styles West in the super mini class. Wow, look at this. The girls 8 to 13 class, Madison Shepard has a 1-point advantage over Hadley Betts. And shout out to Hadley Betts. I believe her mom was our national anthem singer at Briarcliff. She absolutely slayed it. And this battle is going to be a crazy one. And so Madison Shepard has a 1-point gap over Hadley Betts. Then there's just a 5-point gap back to Ada Paduznak. And then there's 3 more points back to Blair Wilson. So only 10 points separate the top 4. That's incredible in that girls 8 to 13 class. Wow, 90 shifter 8 to 13, a 2-point gap between the rider wearing the number 1, Ethan Cornell, and Andrew Klutwick, 140 to 138. Wow, that's impressive. Here's another tight one. 4 points separate Sammy Joe Baxter and Madison Shepard in the 70 auto 6 to 11 class. And that may do it. The other titles may already be wrapped up or they look like a sizable advantage, but these are going to be the classes to watch at Loretta Lynn's. These are the classes that are likely going to see a champion crowned at Loretta's, and there's nothing better than doing that at the finale. There's no place like Loretta's, and there's no place like clinching a championship at Loretta Lynn's. And with that, a big thanks to tonight's featured guests, Jeremy Osborne and Curtis and Justin Evelo. More to come from this event. I plan to chat with some of the riders and other special guests in other near future episodes. But for now, we have to get to the ranch. Thanks to producer Dallas Jansen, my brother, for all his hard work. Thanks to my wife, Brooke, who does so much for me on these trips like this. She's the absolute MVP. And she always says, if people only knew how much time you put into these Digging Deep episodes and everything we do at Digging Deep. So I guess where I'm going with that is thank you to her for everything across the board, from everything that she does on the trips that we go on, going racing, covering racing, and then giving me all the time that I need to get out these episodes and put as much time into them that I do. She is the absolute best. So thank you for everything that you do for me in Digging Deep. And thanks to AMA official Harv Whipple. Thanks to our donors and thanks to our partners, CST Tires. Go to shop.csttires.com today. Yamaha, thanks to Blue Crew. Thanks to SSI Decals, Valvoline, DID Racing Chain, Namura Technologies, Bronco ATV and UTV Components, Lauderdale Steel Enterprises and Concrete Supply. The financial advice of the Haymauer Financial Financial Group, DP Brakes, Factory 43, Binkies Forever ATC Museum, Impact Solutions, Ultimate Poly Products, UPP Racing. Use discount code DiggingDeep15 at uppracing.com, the D6 Ultimate Quad Series, and Manscaped. Get 20% off and free shipping with code DiggingDeep20 at manscaped.com. Support all the brands that support our show, and don't forget to use those codes to save. Find it all on our website, and be sure to click that Rocky Mountain ATVMC banner for all your gear and parts needs and to help us out. And most of all, thanks to you guys for listening. Shop.diggingdeepatvmx.com is your place to go for all our Digging Deep merch. And I know we sold out of our merch, especially our Legends Never Die shirts, super fast at Briarcliff. If you are one of those people that wanted one, but we were already sold out, head over to shop.diggingdeepatvmx.com and we will get you taken care of right away. You can find all things Digging Deep ATV Fantasy related at atvfantasy.com. And if you're looking for another easy way to help support us, visit our website and click the Patreon or Buy Me a Coffee buttons. This allows you to set up a one-time or monthly contribution to support our efforts. Follow the show on social media, Digging Deep ATVMX Podcast, and myself, Cody Jansen, for additional content coverage and more fun stuff heading into the finale of the ATV Motocross National Championship here in 2024. You can find us on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Amazon Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube, and more. Wherever you find podcasts, you'll find the Digging Deep ATVMX podcast. All episodes, additional podcast providers, sponsor links, and discount codes, show merchandise, fantasy info, and more can all be found on our website, diggingdeepatvmx.com. So check that out today. And while you're there, check out our Quad Cross of Nations European Trip VIP Experience drawing presented by the Digging Deep ATVMX podcast. I can absolutely promise you that you do not want to miss out on that opportunity. Be a friend, tell a friend. Please download, subscribe, rate, review, and share. And with that, for Jeremy Osborne, Curtis Avalo, Justin Avalo, Brooke Jansen, Dallas Jansen, and I'm your host, Cody Jansen. Thanks for listening to and making us the most listened to podcast in ATV racing, with more than 262,000 monthly Digging Deep listeners in 109 countries in which you are listening. Until next time, thanks for joining us in Digging Deep with the Stars of ATV Motocross. Things are crashing and burning here at the Digging Deep podcast, much like the Titanic.
Those guys were hauling ass, for real.
I remember watching Doug Gus, I don't know who it was, Steel City, running the same times Friday afternoon as James Stewart was on Sunday back then. It was mental. I've never seen quads go that fast.
Quadlers are freaking gnarly.